Good morning and happy National Poetry Month. My name is Dasha Kelly Hamilton. Welcome to Alignment. I am the Poet Laureate for the state of Wisconsin as well as for the city of Milwaukee. And this is like our national celebration. I won't go so far as call it a holiday, but it's definitely a point where all of we poets, even those of you who don't know you're a poet already, can come together and spend 30 days celebrating the glory of language. And language is glorious. It gives us a chance to understand what's happening in the world, share with other humans what's happening inside of our worlds. And we also have these works of these amazing word artists called poets who are able to capture things that we experience and feel and are trying to figure out as humans all at the same time. So they capture those ideas and those feelings in between the lines, literally, and they leave them with us as this different type of archive of human life as poems. And today we're going to introduce two Wisconsin neighbors who aren't exactly physically close, but we're going to see what they have to say about this line of poetry. And with torn and bleeding hearts, we smile. We'll share where the poem comes from at the end of the program, but just the same when we're talking about this glory of language, we're going to see what glorious narratives this language brings to our two guests. So, and in celebration of National Poetry Month for certain, this month we invited two bona fide poets to fall in conversation with us. So our first poet making their way to the stage from Milwaukee, please give it up for Mr. Niles Janzen. Niles, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
You know what, Del? I am doing really well. The sun is shining. It's poetry month, and I'm not in trouble today. That's my other part-time job, Niles, is staying out of trouble, which you'll find as an adult just doesn't end. It doesn't end. So that's a little bit about how my day is going, but I want to hear how all your days are going. Can you tell us who you are? How about where you're from? Where are you now? Give us all the goods.
Hey, I am Niles Janzen, aka OG King, which is my gamer tag. I am 10 years old. I do sports, fishing, math, speeches, poetry, play pranks on my mom, and I take care of my animals, which are a snake, a tortoise, and two dogs. I am from the north side of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, from a loving family and a lot of pets and good friends. We recently moved to the southeast of Milwaukee. My dad is black and Blackfoot, and my mom is white. I am mixed. I used to be really quiet, but now I am learning to speak up for myself and for justice.
You've heard the phrase, I know, Niles, of someone clutching their pearls. So that's going back to like the 50s and 60s. And there was this when someone was just flabbergasted or just stunned because ladies wore pearls all the time. They would clutch their pearls and be so surprised. So this is me clutching my pearls with all that you are doing and how wonderfully you introduced yourself. And that's a lot to unpack inside of that, inside of your 10 years. I think I want to work backwards from you're describing one, I want to talk about you moving, two, talk about this having all of these cultures and identities, and you're very aware of them at 10. And then the idea of the first from going to shy to speaking out about justice. That's a huge leap. So pick one of those three and tell me a little bit more about that. Moving your cultures or going from shy to speaking about justice.
I think let's probably talk about justice. But so I used to get bullied a lot at school, and so I used to be really quiet and nice and just let them bully me and just not really do anything about it. But since I've grown up and I see what it does, I've stopped letting them take advantage of me, and I'm just trying to help other people do the same.
Mm-hmm. What is a bit of advice that you're able to share? Because I can appreciate that. And sometimes it's, am I being taken advantage of, or am I just a good person and they missed out on And they messed up this opportunity to be in this project or to hang out with me. And sometimes we are gullible and we're not thinking all the way through. So it's not always one thing. So it makes it hard to figure out how to evolve. So what advice do you give others to decide how to move forward?
Well, I really just started doing poetry to tell more and more people. Really, yeah.
Okay, that'll work out well. I appreciate that. And as someone who writes poems, a few poems myself, that's not an easy thing to reach out, and it's really personal, sharing these experiences, sharing these things that you're figuring out, and you're sharing your art. So I want to hear a bit more about your work as a poet. Did you like it right away, or did it take you by surprise?
Well, I didn't really like it at first, but my mom always wanted me to do it, so that's how I got into doing poetry.
You know what? I would imagine that there were a lot of historical figures who became generals and scientists and famed theater stars because their moms told them to do it. So it's okay. It's okay if it starts there. It's okay if it starts there. Well, let me ask you this. Speaking of poetry, can you tell me a little bit about where this line of poetry took you? What were you thinking about? What did it make you think of?
Made me think of it made me think of, to me, it means when even when times are hard, we still get through it. It reminds me of all the times in my life when I was told I was too dark, but I still have to get myself up and go to school and smile and listen, even though I was treated different a lot of times. I also think of the past summer when I was at my dad's house, and after the news of George Floyd's death, the whole block just went crazy, screaming and yelling. The Walgreens was set on fire across the street, and the pain, those is all around me. And by my mom's house, and the Black Lives Matter protesters came down the street, they all had guns. It made me feel sad. It makes me feel sad because there's that much pain. And a little bit later, we hear about another black person killed by police, and another woman and another man. And all of these people killed at the hands of police or supposed to still do our work. I have to write essays and do all these math problems.
And on top of all of that, math, Niles, I'm with you. That's an injustice a little bit too far. And you're talking to someone who still breaks out in a rash when she has to do math. So I can appreciate that. And everything else that you said, young brother, thank you for that. And I'm sorry that you've had to have that school experience. And I also understand that it's unique to you. So many people have to figure out how to withstand that when they go through school, but your experience, and you said you came out on the other side of that, clear about your voice, and you found poetry as a way to stick up for yourself. But it doesn't take away from those moments, like you said, when people tell you things about you that you don't know yet aren't true. You feel that they're not true, but that can be for a really blue day. So I'm glad that you found poetry to get you through. And yes, and with torn and bleeding hearts, we smile. Things may be difficult, but there is another side. There is the other side of this bad moment, this bad day. Even tragically, the murder of George Floyd, there's conversation on the other side of this. So do you feel that you're on the other side of this, or are you still in the middle of it?
I would say mostly in the middle of it.
Okay, that sounds about right. 10 years old, you still got middle school to go through. You have your voice and your clarity and the people around you to give you strong words, because I've got good news and bad news. The good news is, the bad news first. The bad news is that the people that are bullies and haters, They usually grow up to be grown-up bullies and haters. So the good news, though, is you have a plan now on how you get to strengthen yourself and stand tall inside those environments and against those people, because they're going to be everywhere all the time. But you're already on a great path knowing who you are, and you've got your voice and these words. I told y'all words are glorious to help you through. I'm going to have you come back and chat with us a little bit more. I'm going to bring our other guests to the stage, but thank you for making time this morning. So stick around with us. Most excellent. And with torn and bleeding hearts, we smile. And with the young 10-year-old scribe, we're reminded that things are awful in this moment. And the next moment, they may not be. And the next moment, they may not be. And I'm going to bring to the screen now another seasoned veteran, incredibly talented poet who has some wisdom, I'd imagine, on also being on the other side of all of these human life questions. So I'm inviting former poet laureate, Mr. Bruce Dethlefsen. Bruce, thank you for coming on this morning. How are you?
Hi, Dasha. I'm really good. I had a little problem yesterday. I was working on a wooden table, and it got the best of me, hit me in the head. But I'm okay.
When these table uprisings, I had a similar situation with the potato peeler. They're just getting besides themselves. These days.
We have to be careful.
So you are. I just my curious has taken over me. You make, you build, you repair.
No, I every spring we take the deck furniture out of the garage, and the table had a broken leg, so I was trying to find it, and I bent down and it socked me in the head. But I'm fine.
We're good.
I just want to say how proud I am of Niles. And it's just wonderful, and it's so good to see his face. And I want to tell Niles, hang in there, do your poetry, express yourself, and tell the truth. I just think it's wonderful,
especially the telling the truth part. Yes, he's not to be played with. He's real. I've done shows with Niles. All right.
Have you now?
I have. Niles is talented. So if he's 10, I want to say I first started seeing him publicly as he would go to events with his mother when he was a munchkin, as all of us poets bring our kids to everything. And he started showing up on bills at like 7 or 8. So and he studies the craft. So the two of you together, this was very, very much on purpose. So he loves his words the way you do. But before I tell the people your story, you tell the people your story. Bruce, who are you? Where are you from? Where are you now? Tell us all the things.
I'm a retired educator. I put my 30 years in teaching high school. I was a director of a public library, which I loved. It was my favorite job. I love libraries. I think it's the best deal in the whole world, and I encourage people to go to their libraries. I was poet laureate from 2011 to 2012. I went all over the state. I met these wonderful, wonderful people who expressed themselves and loved the arts. And I felt like I was an ambassador for the arts. And and I think that's what you do now. And it's a real treat, and you're going to get pretty tired. So pace yourself. I just want to tell you. Okay. I play in a band, mostly Irish music. I play Dobran, which is a Irish drum. And I play harmonica. I write songs. We haven't been able to get together for the last year because of COVID. I play with the folk singers in Mount Morris on Thursdays, which we haven't been able to do, and it makes me so sad. And I've started taking tap dance lessons in January. And I got to tell you, it's a very humbling experience. It puts you in your place real quick. So that's who I am.
My goodness. Have you? So I'm thinking how to phrase this question. I know the first part I know is yes. You've always been a lifelong learner. If you are an educator and went to a library, you love stuff and things and knowing. Have you always been someone who goes and learns new crafts and learns new tasks? So people that like to learn knowledge and things and stuff. But this is impressive. Harmonica and tap, and you're in a band. And has that always been you?
I've always been interested. I tried golf, but it only lasted like a week, you know. But I fish and I do other kinds of things. We do a lot of walking. I do canoeing. Um, I'm on the library board. I work
Mm.
for political folks around here, and yeah, I like a challenge every so often, and I don't want life to be boring, and it's not. I wake up every morning and I write. I look forward to tomorrow morning because I'm reading a good book. I always
Mm.
have a good book or two, and so life's pretty good. Life's pretty good.
I love that. I'm looking forward to tomorrow because I'm reading a good book. And if you have that
Yeah.
next good book ready to go, then you always have another great part of a story for tomorrow.
And you always have to have another book.
And you always have to have another book. And I really appreciate this, being able to hear you say that the world is good, life is good, that there's joy right now. I was talking to someone recently and he was describing how he feels not badly, but uncomfortable, talking about how well he is in this framing of
Mm.
being so dire. And it is dire for so many of our neighbors. And we still get to acknowledge that things are okay today. And that there's a good book ready for you for tomorrow, and you have joy in your life right now. So I am celebrating that you are unapologetic about your peace and your joy, Mr. Bruce. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I'm very happy where I am, and because I'm happy and I'm okay, my thoughts turn to people who are struggling at this point. And so I'm trying to work with the food bank and a lot of political stuff. Yeah. So you asked me where I was from.
Yeah.
I grew up in Kansas City, Missouri.
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 Properly.
Kansas, yeah. St. Louis, you say Missouri, and Kansas City, you say Missouri. And I went to, I had a really good public education. I went to a predominantly black high school in inner city in Kansas City. Then I moved up to Wisconsin to go to college in La Crosse. I worked in the emergency ward all during college. I learned how to read. I mean, not just the words, but I learned how to actually read. And I read every book I could find, and I probably didn't go to too many classes. Just I taught myself. I had a mentor, a poet named Janzen, who was nationally known. And I took like 3 courses of creative writing with him, and I fell in love with poetry. On Tuesday afternoon, we would show up in class, and here would be like Denise Levertov sitting in the classroom, national poets on their way from Chicago to Minneapolis who just stopped in to see John. And I thought this happened all the time. You know, I was absolutely knocked out. Yeah, that's where I am now. Oh, I live in Westfield, Wisconsin, about an hour north from Madison, small town. Everybody's got their own well. Even McDonald's has their own well. And there's a cornfield in the backyard of everybody's house, and we can walk around the whole town in a half hour. It's kind of nice.
Ooh, so many questions. One, I remember my grandmother had, when the well was removed on her property, and she had the city piping, I suppose. And it was always immediately the conversation about the taste, and she kind of missed it. Secondly, in this town, you can walk it or you can travel it in half an hour, coming from, having this experience. And La Crosse is not a small town, and Kansas City, of course, is a huge city.
Yeah.
Well, I guess you're in a different person in all those different phases, but that comfort of a town cozy in that size, in that way.
It's wonderful. And then sometimes I really miss the busyness of a big town and the arts and things that you can do. Being online helps a lot. But I keep thinking, I need to move to Philadelphia or something and start reading poetry. but that's for tomorrow. So
that's for tomorrow. Yes, for that next part of that story. And what I really want to lean into is you mentioned learning to read. And when I went to grad school to get my MFA, there was a course about reading like a writer. And I thought, I guess I'll take this. And all the conversation was so obvious, but having it said out loud, it made it make so much sense. So could you just talk a little bit about what that means, how you learn to read?
I read the classics, which I missed. I read a lot of old, dead white men with beards. And so I tried to read things from foreign writers. I fell in love with some of the Norwegian writers, some of the Italian writers. And I thought that the real truth of all of our humanity was in fiction, reading fiction. And I just loved the stories and was swept away by all those things. And sometimes I would cry. Sometimes I would throw the book across the room. I'm a really good audience. And I'll laugh when I'm supposed to. I'll cry when I'm supposed to. So I really enter that whole world of the book, and it's a wonderful experience.
Well, do you pen fiction and poetry?
Mostly poetry. I like the narrative kinds of poetry. I remember things that happened to me, and then make some not a lesson, but compare it to what's going on in my life now. This was then, this is now. This is why this is important to me, and maybe it's important to you. That's what I like to do.
Okay, so the fiction is for you, and the poetry, the rest of us, the humans, get that out of you. And I'm always curious with writers how broadly their pen goes or not. So I'm just curious if you write all the things. Yeah. So speaking of lines of poetry, I'm curious to hear, where did this line take you with torn and bleeding hearts?
Well, my first. I wanted to look it up right away, but I didn't. Okay, so I don't know where it's from. But first thing it reminded me of was Nelson Mandela had a favorite poem, and it was Invictus. And in Invictus, my head is bloody but unbowed. It reminded me of that, all the struggle, terrible struggle, and yet we persevere. I'm reminded of the tragedy in our lives. I have two sons that passed away, and yet I still try to see the humor in everything. I love Kurt Vonnegut Jr., who wrote about the darkest kinds of things, but always had a joke in there. He always had like the cosmic giggle, and I appreciate people who have that a lot. I also was reminded of 9/11, the London Blitz, the Trump years, that we can struggle, and if we persevere together, we can do well. Yeah, we still smile.
We still smile. I love that there's still a cosmic giggle. If we can keep that in the midst of it all, and you have that eye, like meeting eyes with somebody in a moment. This is crazy, right? You see this? This is wild, right? Okay,
exactly.
You're a stranger, but we had this moment together. That cosmic giggle. Sometimes there's silence.
Oh, you get it. Oh, you get it. Good. I'm not alone.
It's not just me.
I'm not alone.
It's not just me. I'm going to ask Niles to join us back on screen here.
Good.
Both of you speaking about being able to see the other side of this day. So thank you for bringing that joy and that truth. And both of you being gripped by words. So you two poets, Bruce meet Niles, Niles meet Bruce. I'm glad you guys are here together. Thank you.
Good to meet you.
Good to meet you too.
I'm a little jealous that you have a lot more time to write poetry than I have left. So don't waste it. From the old guy, don't waste it, Every day. It's good for you. I think it's the arts that really make us human. It means a lot to me. Yeah.
Also, I'm sorry to hear about your sons died.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's a tough thing, but you go on. You go on. And you have people that love you, and it means a lot. Thanks.
Also, you said you went fishing. What is your favorite lake to go fishing at?
Favorite lake, you said? Oh, I fish around here. We have a little lake called Lawrence Lake. I keep my canoe out there. When I grew up in Missouri, we used to go to the Ozarks, the mountains in southern Missouri, and I learned how to fish for bass. You ever fish for bass?
Yeah, I fish for bass all the time.
It's my favorite, and I like the topwater lures, and I like that big splash and the pull. My brother says it's all about the tug. Sometimes I keep them and eat them. Sometimes I just enjoy them. I love being out on the water. I think water is kind of like my element, and I feel very comfortable and spiritual around water. You like fishing?
Yeah, I love fishing. I do it all.
Where you go?
I go to Pewaukee Lake on my boat.
My best friend grew up on Pewaukee Lake and spent all day in the summer fishing.
Also, what is the biggest fish that you caught before?
I've caught in the ocean. I've caught barracuda. I caught one bass that was 8 pounds at night up north in Wisconsin. Yeah, and I've caught some big northerns. I don't know. Have you catch one? I think we should talk about poetry now.
Yeah.
Fishing is fine too.
I'd rather be fishing.
Fishing is fine too. Oh my god, please, this is great.
Dasha, one thing I do miss with the COVID thing is for the last 6 or 7 years I've been working with prisoners in the state prison, and I do poetry workshops, and haven't been able to go in for a year, and my heart just hurts when I think of these men who live in prison without that kind of organized expression. And so I hope it starts up pretty soon. And I know you're involved.
Mm-hmm. I did see a notice that they're starting to do volunteer orientations. So I don't know, to get prepared for opening. And we have some opportunities to do some virtual workshops. So we'll definitely be in touch soon. And although Niles has not been to prison or jail, his mother is a poet and an educator as well. And, she's also done some work. So he's been around all the things. So she's done some work. We've been able to go inside and do workshops and performances as well.
That's great.
My mom used to do that. But she, at night, she used to tell because she didn't work at like a adult prison. She worked at like a kid. At night, she used to tell them stories and stuff like that.
Most excellent. And it's interesting, Niles, and you've been able to see all the different ways and places that poetry shows up. So when Bruce says that you have so many poems in front of you, it's the poems that you write. It's the every possible profile of person that could hear a poem from you, from me, from Bruce, and think different, feel different, better, worse, just different. And that's really magical. And I am glad to be in company with you two gentlemen. And I'm not up on my fishing yet. My husband's going to take me halibut fishing this year. I'm excited for that. I know, big fish. I'm going big.
Big
going
fish.
big.
One word of advice for Niles.
Doing something else.
One word of advice for Niles. As a poet, number one rule is pay attention. Don't miss a thing. Don't miss a thing. And you'll have a very interesting life, I think. That's it.
Most excellent. Well, thank you both for being on Alignment today. I want to talk a little bit more to give everybody the reveal of where this poem comes from. Oh. So each month we gather two people from across the state and invite them into an authentic conversation. Who knew we'd end up talking about fishing today? And it all started with one line of poetry. get my stuff together here. With torn and bleeding hearts, we smile. And we'll be here every first Wednesday at 11:30 Central Standard Time with 2 new guests having a new conversation on a different line of poetry. And this month's poem comes from Paul Laurence Dunbar, We Wear the Mask. We wear the mask that grins and lies. It hides our cheeks and shades our eyes. This debt we pay to human guile, with torn and bleeding hearts we smile, and mouth with a myriad subtleties. Why should the world be overwise in counting all our tears and sighs? Nay, let them only see us while we wear the mask. We smile, but, oh great Christ, our cries to thee from tortured souls rise. We sing, but, oh, the clay is vile beneath our feet and long the mile. We let the world dream otherwise. We wear the mask. By Paul Laurence Dunbar. That is our line, aligning two poets, two neighbors, two humans in a conversation. Thank you for being here. Tune in, subscribe, do all that YouTube-y stuff, and we look forward to seeing you here next month when we have a new conversation with 2 new Wisconsin guests and you. Thanks.